Hello and welcome to Note to File, a clinical research podcast.
A collection of interviews, candid commentary, and general nonsense for the clinical research community.
Check us out at notetofilepodcast.com.
And now, without further ado, on to the show.
All right, hey guys, welcome to another Note to File live. Today is November 6th. Denali, how's it going?
It's going all right. It's pretty decent. It's like officially fall here, so.
Okay, another day on the corporate hellscape of Viva.
You know, I may be in the corporate world, but it's actually, you know what? I've worked for corporate hellscapes before. This is not one of them.
So Viva's listening, got it.
All right, well, probably not. They have better things to do.
Yeah, true. That's like take over the world. That's a good point.
Yep,
so,
it's the goal.
Very good. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guests, Del Smith. Del, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad that I've risen to a stature to where I can be invited to this podcast. So I think my grandmother's watching, so to make her proud.
All right. Well, we'll try to be polite for your grandma. Hi, Del's grandma. No, I've actually, I've talked to Denali. I've wanted to have you on for a long time, and actually, it was cool that we got to meet more formally at the Innovation Network gathering and be part of a dive team about something that you probably don't really think about very much.
What's that? When our government's going to open? Administration, politics? Oh no, clinical trial diversity.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. All right, okay, let's.
Well, and then Del had the misfortune of us having introduced him when he talked.
That's true. That was a great pleasure for us. But
yeah, it was entertaining. When I knew you were going to introduce me, I knew it was going to be at the very least entertaining, and it was half true. So yeah, entertaining, half true.
I'll take it. Yeah, man, let's open up, like we do with every show. Tell us a bit about yourself and kind of what brought you into the clinical trial space, if you would.
Well, let me start by saying I'm not going to tell you I've been in this space for the past 3 decades. Like, you hear a lot of people in this space. No offense to people who have been in here this long. My history goes back about 5.5 years at the time that I started Acclinate in early 2020. Prior to that, I spent 14 years in higher education. I was a business school professor for 14 years, 6 years before starting the company. I spent as the dean of a business school at HBCU called Alabama A&M University. My academic background is all in business, PhD in business, master's business, undergrad business. I tell people I'm a business guy.
You're a business doctor. You're literally a business doctor.
I am literally a business doctor. I was joking with somebody. That's like, when the guy was talking about how when he was younger, he would like steal his parents' Playboy and go to the room and look at the pictures. And I was like, I was stealing my parents' Black Enterprise magazine and taking it to my room and at a young age. So maybe that says something about me. But before that, I actually spent a little bit of time in healthcare, mainly in the technology space. I worked for companies like McKesson, US Oncology, Memorial Hermann out of Houston. And then prior to that, kind of spent some time in the military as well too. So US Army. So you kind of look at that background and you maybe ask the question like, what the heck am I doing starting a company focused on increasing representation in clinical trials? The story of that is my mom was a nurse my entire life. Growing up, I saw her. She moved into doing home healthcare because she was just really kind of fed up with the system of healthcare. And she wanted to be as close to the patient as possible. So it's really great seeing that. Unfortunately, she contracted tuberculosis from one of her patients. Passed away a year later. I was in my late teens. And then come to find out about 3 months after she passed away that there was a clinical trial in the area looking for people with drug-resistant strains of tuberculosis, but we never knew about it because at the time we didn't have health insurance. And so we were being seen by the local community hospital, and this research was taking place at the prestigious academic medical center.
Right.
So
right.
That seed was planted way back then. And then, kind of all these life journeys got me to a point in time where in late 2019, I was like, wait, this problem still exists? Like, we don't know how to really access the people who need the studies, and we're not developing a relationship to have them feel comfortable with saying yes. And that's when I quit my job and started this company full time.
I love that. Which is more, it's the wrong word. Which is more frustrating, being a professor or being a founder?
Definitely being a founder. I don't know if there's too many frustrations with being a professor. I no offense to the professors that are out there, but it's a pretty nice job. You know, you're typically working 10 months out of the year. You get paid to talk a lot and to do some research. But I enjoy doing business more than I like talking about business. And so I'm in the right space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, let's just open right up here. I mean, we've been talking about diversity for what? I mean, it's probably been 20 years in clinical trials, right? Has the needle moved? What's right? What are we doing wrong? What are the sort of painful truths that, why we're not seeing more movement?
If you look at where we started in clinical trials, it's kind of hard to argue that we haven't made some progress, right? It's not fair. Yes, but
we came from a pretty dark place.
Yeah, we did, right? Brett would have been able to get to the studies. I don't know.
You'd have been great.
They may have disqualified him for the beer because they would have been like, I don't know.
That's true. It's a little questionable.
So we made progress, right? Clearly from the days where it was, 1920s and 1930s. But if you look at the optimal outcome that we're trying to get to, which is generalizable data that's based upon representative samples and data to ensure that drugs are safe and effective for the very people who need them most, we still have some work to do. And so I think it's kind of this tale of two cities of, we can celebrate some progress we made, but yet there's still a lot of work to be done. So that's the first part of your question. I think the second part of that is, what do we need to do in order to really get to more of that optimal outcome? And clearly, this challenge, this problem, there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that's going to resolve it, right? Clearly, there's a focus on sites. We need to make sure we have the right sites in the right locations. We need to make sure we have the right staff at those sites that can understand the lived experiences of individuals that may be engaging with them. We need to make sure that protocols aren't designed in a way that excludes certain people that shouldn't be excluded from the protocol just because they've copied and pasted from previous protocols. And I think there's an opportunity to utilize data and technology to do a better job of, going through these records and the data to identify people who are likely to benefit from being part of studies. Our focus on our company really is around the fact that even when you do all those things, you got to get someone to be able to say yes. And so that's the people part of it. And so what we really focus on is this ability to have sustained engagement with communities, to build trust and to gather data, to be able to know when and how should we present an opportunity for a study to a person and to the right person. And that's what we do. So much of the work, we talk about this being this combination of touch plus tech. We utilize this sustained engagement with this community of 180,000 people that we built so far across the United States. But we also have a patent on a technology platform that uses predictive analytics to be able to take this engagement data to say when is the most appropriate time to present a study opportunity. We call it a participation probability index.
Yeah, I've been curious. I mean, I don't know if you can go into more detail really, but like where does the tech stop and the human element start? I think it's really sort of an interesting juncture, at least to me. Is there like a clear answer? Or is that something that you guys are sort of figuring out as you go, I assume?
It's really intriguing. And I'll start by talking about this concept I've been speaking with our team about, which is a digital hug. Again, a digital hug. And I bring it up because one of our key metrics is mobilization, the ability to get somebody to take a health action. In the case of pharma, that's getting somebody to pre-screen for a study. And we have a community team that both goes out into the communities, unfolds tables, engages in parks, in recreation centers, community centers to connect and access people, but also to engage to build trust. But we also have a digital team that does some of the things that you would see traditional marketing companies do that are trying to recruit, which is like using digital advertisements. And what we found, of course, is the latter, we can access many, many more people versus a former. But when it comes to the ability to mobilize someone to build up trust where they take an action, when they're out in the community and they hug someone, that person's like, I'm ready to do what you say I need to do for my health because I trust you and we've connected. So what we're trying to do really is trying to create a digital hug. Like, how can we take the best of the digital world along with that in-person, physical touch and combine those to have broad access, broad engagement, and broad mobilization. We're not where we need to be at yet, but I think we've made more progress in that than a lot of other people.
Yeah, fair. Are you finding, I mean, I hate to, like, it's a trope, but like we're in very fucking weird times right now. Do you feel that, like, is trust getting better or worse generally? I could sort of see a case for either one. But yeah, I'm curious, like, maybe what your direct experience has been like.
Yeah, if we're talking about trust in the system and the healthcare system, clearly not getting better. And trust has many different dimensions. When we use the term trust, and it kind of like, do you trust what the person's saying? But for many people that are navigating this system, it's like, can I just trust that the system's working out for my best interest? Can I trust that when I have concerns that somebody's there to listen to me? So when you look at those dimensions, we don't really see them improving. Now, what it does is I think it creates opportunities, because what we're finding, and a lot of data showing this, we're seeing this, is that we just had a meeting this morning and we're like, people are going to TikTok and YouTube for their health related questions and issues more than they're trying to get an appointment with their doctor. Because, part of this is you pick up the phone and call your doctor. We'll see you in 6 months. And, all right. Whereas you go online, but, that creates its own set of issues of, which of this content can you actually trust to be accurate? So, for all these issues that we're talking about, there's opportunities and there's challenges for all these things.
Yeah, I was just reading an article this morning about that, about like women going to TikTok for contraceptive help. And I was like, well, that's terrifying. But it's how do you counteract that and figure out who can you trust and how do you determine that?
Yeah, this is what we do. So we have a community called Now Included. So like, if you have to go to nowincluded.com, I'm not trying to advertise for that, but like, that's the community that we curate. We have health professionals that are ensuring that the content is vetted when it goes there. And that's the place that we utilize. So we tell people there's many places you can go to, and we clearly are on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube as well too, but it's through our Now Included community platform. Yeah. So we feel very comfortable that information is assessed for, I call what's accurate. But we live in a time, and Brad brought it up, like I used to tell people, like, you can never argue with the fact that, good data is good science and it's good business. But I'm like, well, that argument's starting to lose a little steam, because people are saying, well, what is good science? And that to me is what the scariest part of all this is, that we cannot easily determine what is good science and good information anymore.
Well, and then even if it is good science, there's certainly contingents that are saying that it's an opinion, when in fact it is truly fact. So even if it is good, even if you realize that this is validated, vetted, and good science, there's a whole voice out there saying it's not.
Yeah, but then like, what are facts these days?
So I've mentioned this before. I have a children's book for my kids called Facts versus Opinions versus Robots. And it's about teaching kids the difference between a fact and an opinion. And what's it is like an opinion is something you can feel, but you can't like see and touch. And a fact is something that like you cannot argue. I'd have to go find it. Clearly it's been a while since I read it, but it's like trying to teach kids that. And I was like, we need adult versions of this.
No doubt. Yeah, and I know it seems like we're kind of on a tangent a little bit, but I think what we're talking about is really central to the issue that's at play here. Like that we're asking somebody to take some action around their health, but they can't easily decipher facts from fiction. So when the other person on the other side says, "Oh no, we have consent. You can trust that the process has been vetted, and that this is not going to hurt you," they don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah. So I have a question. So you work a lot with like community and the patients. How do you crosswalk that? You mentioned this before, like between like the sites. So you have like people saying like, hey, getting these trials, getting like at the larger macro level, you're having this engagement with the community. How do you make sure then like the logistics of making sure the site connects with those patients? How do you guys manage that at all? Or do you use additional things there?
We have to. I'll tell you the interesting story about how we started the company, my co-founder and I. So when we kind of laid out the company, we looked at this ecosystem and we said, we're kind of new to the space. So we're like, what's a CRO? I mean, we were at that place in 2019. We didn't even know really what a CRO is. So, well, okay, what's a CRO? We know what a sponsor is. And there's these things called sites. What do sites do in the ecosystem? Oh, that's where people actually engage and go to for the study. And so we said, well, if you look at this issue that we're trying to solve, we need to go to the sites because that's the place where the rubber meets the road. And so we actually got in the car. We traveled like to 3 different cities to visit site networks and say, hey, we've got a new way of doing this. We want to talk about sustained engagement. We want to talk about data. And these sites were like, oh my gosh, we're ready. Let's do this. It's needed. And we're like, great. Here's how much it's going to cost. And the site said, we don't have any money. So, we were baffled at this because like, this is the place where so much of the value is derived. But yet, if you look at the way the ecosystem, and of course, I'm now talking to people who understand this, it's like the dollars don't flow accordingly. And so as a company, we said, we know CROs could be the next stop. But ultimately, we're trying to get to the people who have to turn in this data, who are ultimately responsible, and who have the purse strings, it's sponsors. So let's go to them. I remember people told us, like, you'll never break into pharma. It's so difficult. It's going to take you years to break into pharma. But to your question, Denali, we've got to the point now where we have a significant number of pharma who are clients for us to engage with us. And so they're turning to us as like partners now and saying, okay, we know we have to figure out a way to bring the sites into the equation. How can you help us do that, Acclinate? And so we kind of have a couple of pretty significant pilots where we are working with the sponsors to engage with the sites so that we can do this engagement around the sites. And then figure out ways to identify the right people that we can funnel into the sites. So it's an ecosystem. I wish we could just primarily deal with the sites because, again, that's where the value derives, but we got to have the dollars to back and do this work as well.
Yeah, no, that's tricky. And I think that's a problem for a lot of things in the industry, right? I mean, ultimately, shit happens at sites. But again, the stakeholder with the least amount of money, the least amount of influence, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's just sort of where we are. So yeah, I was curious, and you kind of answered it along the way, but how bought in, generally are you seeing sponsors be with this? We all know it's something that needs to happen, and has that, and even over the last, I don't know, couple of years, has that changed? Given the landscape of everything else going on, is that a moving target, so to speak?
Yeah. So I said we've been around for 5 years, and for each year that we've been in business, we've been able to really kind of double our growth in terms of revenue. We'll use that, and so that kind of corresponds to your question about sponsors being bought in.
Sure.
We had a double-digit revenue growth projected for 2025, and at the end of Q4 2024, and then we had this change in administration that took place. And I will tell you, because I like to tell people about this real life and what way it is. We had a number set for what we were going to close for Q1 and Q2. We closed 2% of that number. 2%.
Yeah,
of that
that's
number.
crazy.
And I say that, and the reason I can say that, still be okay saying that, because we last quarter we closed a record quarter last quarter, and we're on track to do the same this quarter. But we had 6 months of craziness and chaos that, from an industry perspective, it caused our customers and sponsors, many sponsors, just to say pause. We're just trying to figure out what's going on. And we had to ask the question, like, does this mean they're going to backpedal and retract and not do this work? And so we asked them, we leaned in, and what we heard was, this is still important to do. We just have to do it in different ways than we've been doing it before. But at the end of the day, it's still about safety, efficacy, ensuring the drugs work the same for everybody. And that's the business that we're in. So we as a company too had to change some of our language. We don't use, frankly, the term diversity as much. It doesn't change what we do. We talk about representation in studies, and talking about this is just a good thing that people need to do out of the goodness of their heart. It's kind of out the door. right? And so we have to focus on KPIs and return on investment and OKRs and all the things and all the metrics that are needed to validate this. But again, to the communities that we serve, to the individuals that we serve, they don't care. They just want to see us, move on their behalf. So I'm optimistic, and that the world is getting to a little bit more sane place. But you never know.
And I think we kind of you saw that like in the macro industries as well. Like you saw like Target's making questionable choices in the first half of the year. If you looked at any of their advertising now, they've kind of switched back. Their messaging has changed a little bit. So you saw this like huge adjustment and swing in the first half. And then that shockingly, wasn't good business. Who could have ever thought that? And then it's moved back. We've kind of seen it sort of start right-siding itself.
Yeah, Target's a great example of how we have more power influence than what I think we realize. But I would tell you, it's a strange thing because, and I talked about this the last time we saw each other, which is so much of the work we were doing before was based upon guidance. And people are like, what's the FDA going to do? What are they going to require? What's the mandate? Fedora and diversity action plans. And whenever you have somebody doing something for guidance and compliance, they're doing like the bare minimum just to get the checkbox.
Yeah.
And once that guidance kind of started to go away and people are like, we can't turn to the FDA today to get that same type of guidance, there was this collective pause, but we had people who were like, you know what, let's really do the hard work to do this the right way, even if it's going to take a little bit more time and more investment. And that's what we're seeing. And so I tell people, not everybody has taken that approach. Not every sponsor has taken that approach, but enough sponsors have taken that approach to where we as a company, I believe, are going to be just fine and continue to be able to grow as a result of that.
I'm curious, you talk about sites. I mean, I'm curious if do you see the sort of, I don't know, growing, that's the word I'm looking for, consolidation and like private equity ownership of sites as being, potentially good or bad for increased representation? I mean, I see a case made either way. I feel like with private equity, you want to just make as much money as possible. You may not care philosophically about how you're making that money or what patient population you're working with, but is there a case where it is a good business case? And again, I guess I'm curious does that have any effect one way or the other, you think?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of private equity. I was going to try to sugarcoat it, but I'm not.
You are in good company then.
My last company was acquired by a PE firm, and it was like one of the worst exits ever. And I said to myself, never again. But in terms of your question, Brad, it's hard. I mean, to do some of this work, you have to kind of think about the long game and almost paying a premium to get to this outcome that we're looking for. And when we start talking about long game and paying a premium, those things typically don't align with some of the ways that private equity works. So I could be unfair to anybody who's in PE out there. I apologize. It's not personal. So the growing acquisitions and consolidations and with PE and sites, I don't see that as aligning well with a greater intentionality and focus on this issue of representation in studies. Hopefully I'm proven wrong.
Yeah, no, that was my assumption. Again, I hate to assume, but at least tracks in theory.
I mean, that's for anything. I mean, I'll say, like I said, you're in good company. I think we fairly align on the same thing. Like private equity is going to do what private equity does, which is make profits. They're not looking to increase access. They're not looking to increase representation. They're not looking to increase patient care. Quite frankly, like push comes to shove, their goal is profits, and that's what they do, right? And some industries that actually does make a lot of sense. There is some competitive advantages that make sense, but I don't think healthcare and care delivery is a appropriate place for that business model.
Yeah, and of course, 2 years from now, you may see a headline that says Acclinate acquired by private equity firm. They're like, the number must have been big enough.
Well, let me ask about that. I mean, I think what you're building is based on, sensitive, community built information and relationships. So how do you potentially manage that? If a CRO comes along and says, hey, we want to give you a mountain of cash, is that, I mean, that's, I don't know, I guess, nothing wrong inherently, but it seems like it's sensitive, right?
No, your point is very valid. I'm not concerned as much about that. And the only reason I say this is because, one, we've surrounded ourselves with a lot of great people, both our internal team as well as our existing investors, who this aspect of our mission is front and center. And frankly, if I came to the table to those stakeholders and said, oh, we've got a great deal to acquire us, and it didn't make sense and it wasn't going to be in the best interest of our community, frankly, they would override me and they just say, we don't think this is the right fit. So we lean into that and understand that, so much so that, we did a Series A investment round last year. And the entity that stepped to the table to lead our round was actually a Fortune company, Syncora. I can say it as public information. And we kind of really, really liked that because they weren't coming to the table saying, how big can we build this thing so we can increase valuation so we can get a return on investment. They were saying, what you guys have built has significant enterprise value to us and the ecosystem. And if we could continue to scale this out, we think it could both have significant, value and cost savings, but also really improve lives. And so those are the type of people that we're trying to surround ourselves with. But there will be a point in time where I think we'll have to make that assessment when the offer comes and say, this is fit. But I feel pretty good about the people around us. And I tell them, it's like, just like anybody, I used to say I'm a capitalist and say it pretty freely, but I'm using that term less these days. Like anybody, I take part in the system of capitalism. And so, the dollars you can't ignore. But to your point that you made, Brad, like the lives that we impact, the lives that we're changing has so much greater value to us than the dollar. And I hope we maintain that.
So I had a similar question sort of based on this trust aspect. And I think I've seen clinical trials run, talked to Brad about trials at his site, seen lots of different sites running trials. And like, how do you maintain the trust when you get folks engaged? Yes, this clinical trial makes sense. They get involved. And then you have a site bungling the clinical trial. You have a sponsor messing up the protocols and the execution of it. Like, how do you maintain that trust in the situations where it's complex, there's a lot going on, people are going to fuck up? How do you maintain the trust when you've been the one to like get them to that spot and then now it's someone else is fucking it up and they're like, whoa, what did you do? Is that something you run into?
It is. So I'll tell you about our mission. Our mission is to empower communities to take actions for better health. Now, that's different than where we started. Our mission in our first 2 years was to help pharma increase the diversity of their clinical trial participants. And when we made that shift after that point, we kind of said to ourselves, like, you know what, we're really not here working for pharma. We appreciate them because they're our customer in the sense of that, but we're here really to work for our community. And our second slide, after our name, when we talk to a sponsor, is we are not a clinical trial recruitment.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, why are we talking to you? Because we need people for our studies. And we'd say, is that working for you? And if it is, then maybe we don't need to talk. Yeah. But we believe there's a better approach. We believe that a better approach is to access, engage, empower, and educate people so they can make an informed decision about participating in your clinical trial. And so none of our contracts are based upon if you get somebody into a study, you get paid for them, because that model doesn't work. So to get back to your question, what it allows us to do is, like, we're engaging with people. If somebody's in our community and they say, hell no, I'll never take part in a study. You'll never convince me. I ain't going to be no guinea pig. We're like, that's okay. We just want to continue to engage with you so you can be empowered to make a health decision that you think is best for you. And so that's the element of trust. Like, that's the pure element of trust. Trust is when you're not expecting someone to do something in order for you to maintain the relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And so when people see that's how we operate and what they've done, there's been sites that have messed it up. There's been sponsors that have messed it up. But the trust, we still maintain the trust because they know who we are and what we're about. And so our job then becomes, how do we work with the sponsors and the sites to say, you know what, all this trust that we built up to hand over to you, you just effed up. So let's work together to figure out how we can keep that transition and that conversion, that trust with you. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time continuing to engage with the community that we're not going to have a difficult time engaging with because they still trust us.
Right.
Yeah, and you spoke earlier a little bit about having the right sites and the right staff at the right sites. Do you feel like that's something that's improving? I mean, I feel like we should know enough now, have enough data to sort of know where we may find different patient populations, where we might be able to, help make some of this happen. And then we hear the stories that sponsors go back to the same sites again and again. We're not necessarily learning the lesson. Again, do you find that's improving or has improved at all?
Yeah, I think on the surface, folks are recognizing that, one, geography is a pretty significant variable in this.
For sure.
And you have folks that, like, once you drive outside of a certain radius, they're like, I'm not going to take part in that.
Yeah.
Right? We have the data to show that. So I think sponsors are doing really good and sites are doing really good with understanding there needs to be some level of proximity to the individuals that you want to engage with for your studies. So one, I'm giving them credit for that. There's that zip code when they're looking at. We even to that point, we even get down to where we know on this side of the street in Philadelphia, you're going to be able to engage. But as soon as you go over to the other side of the street, even though it's in the same zip code, you're not going to be able to engage. People don't go on that side. And so that type of data, which, it's kind of like this lived experience data. Like what's really going on in people's lives. And I think the same thing goes to the staff. This is not just about a matter of like, do you have the same race and ethnicity and gender on the other side of the table when somebody comes to your site? It's like, do those people understand the lived experience of the folks that are walking in the door? And I think if the industry spent more time thinking about like, how do you get the people that are engaging with folks that are coming to your sites to understand the very difficult real life challenges and issues that the folks are dealing with? Like, if you could do that, it doesn't matter what your race or ethnicity or age is, people are going to eventually connect. And there may be a little bit of a barrier when they come in, they say, okay, there's this, 6'7" tall, white guy with a beard. I may give you a little bit of inches on your height, right?
I appreciate that.
But as soon as you start engaging with them and you start understanding, their life, all of a sudden they're going to be inviting you over for dinner, right? And that's where I think the industry has to get to that part of that relationship.
I don't disagree. I think a lot of it's just, I don't know, communication, familiarity. I mean, again, like you get to know each other. But you know what? There's no ROI on that, at least for me at a site, right? So that makes it challenging to do. And you see, and maybe this is like another bigger like philosophical question about like who should help bear some of that responsibility, especially from a financial perspective, where like I want to go out and be everywhere. I want to talk to everybody. I want to do those things. But as a site, I'm got my head down half the time when I'm not, spouting gibberish on a podcast. But sponsors don't really want to pay for that, or they'll be like, cool, here's a couple $100 for a lunch and learn, good luck. See what happens. So, it kind of comes down to, I think a lot of sites are super well intentioned. We're working within the communities that we live, like a lot of site owners they were coordinators. They want to build this stuff up and do a better job and create more access. But, there doesn't seem to be an investment from the top down.
You're so right about that. I'll tell you something that's been on my mind and my spirit for a while is after conference season has come in at this end, is I'm like, there's so many people on these panels just regurgitating what we already know as being the problems. and I bring it up because it's like we recognize that sites do not have the resources or the capacity. And that's not to say there's anything wrong, but like they're focused on their core mission. And so now you're talking about engaging in the community and going out on weekends to engage in the community. That just doesn't make sense. And so sponsors, if you know this, and that's what you desire as an outcome for your sites, to have greater representation, you need to be putting forth the resource to the money and finding the companies. I think before we're here, I want to see 10 other Acclinates out there, because we're not going to be able to address the need that's out there fully. But it used to be the sponsors like, we don't have a resource, and we're like, well, now you have a resource. You have us. And I'm not going to call them by name, but one particular sponsor that said, we want you to support our sites. We're going to pay for it. And we're going to give our sites an opt-in. And we're going to educate the sites on what the resources that you provide. And if they opt in to utilize your resources, we're going to cover the cost for it. That is showing significant outcomes and ROI for everybody involved. And I look at that and say, could that be replicated? But the person that's going to have to be dependent on is the sponsor willing to write the check. But again, it goes back to the ROI. If you're able to show, listen, you have greater representation, your studies are enrolling faster, greater representation, putting the math into the ROI for that shouldn't be that difficult to do.
No, yeah, I would think, and even in small examples, I think it's borne out to be true. I mean, ideally, isn't every site their own little Acclinate? I mean, we should represent the communities in which we exist, to the greatest degree that we can. But yeah, I feel that as a site because.
Well, that's probably pretty true for your type of site though, too, because you are in the community, right? Like you're in the community more so. Like if you're a large AMC, that's going to be harder because you're in this giant medical center facility. Maybe you need to have more engagement to get actually out into the true community, not just your AMC hub that you're in.
Yeah, I guess you have to consider all the
site types, right?
So speak,
Yeah. There's some sites that are out there. They've built as part of their business model engagement in the community.
Yeah, no, yes, I've seen it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it is really amazing. And I will tell you, they typically aren't talking about challenges with getting representation for their studies and getting folks at their studies. But they made the investment from the very beginning and have it be part of the core. And to your point, if you haven't built that as part of your large site network, trying to retrofit it to that is not that easy to do.
Yeah, I can see that. So if you were, let's say you were a small community site, like what's an actionable thing you would do like today? Is there anything that jumps out that like sites can do to really have an impact that maybe doesn't break the bank too much?
Yeah, I love the question. Getting to some actual insights, and particularly thinking about ones that don't take significant investment of time and money. One, I'd say this. I'm just going to use this. Like we've done enough work right now where if any site said, "Can we take 30 minutes of your time to just try to learn some best practices or some things that you guys do that we may be able to borrow from and do? Can we do that?" We'd say absolutely. And matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about this, we may even try to put together a webinar or something where we help kind of say to sites, like, here's some very small things that you can do.
We're gonna snip that clip and put it out so that everybody starts reaching out to you. So don't worry.
Okay. And so a practical example, we had one where we had a site that was like, I don't feel comfortable asking for race and ethnicity. Like the people were like, I don't feel comfortable. And we said, well, one of the things that we do is when we engage with someone, we'll be like, we're about to ask you some questions that you're going to find on your driver's license, very common questions. And so that lead in kind of helped them get to a point where it's like, okay, your full legal name, your race, your race and ethnicity, your gender, your age. And they were like, well, if it's on my driver's license and they asked me for this and I have it around, then it shouldn't be that difficult for me to give this information to you, right?
Oh, but it's a small but impactful difference in some of the nuance in these things that people don't often recognize. And I think it's, again, this goes back to the bigger problem, but it can be challenging because, look, research coordinators are doing this work. Research coordinators make jack shit for money. If you are if you're a super good coordinator, you're not a coordinator for long. You're a CRA, you're something else probably. So I think that's challenging to find people who can sort of learn that level of nuance and engage meaningfully, communicate effectively. That's hard. I think that's hard. I think that's that creates a bigger problem, and not just in the representation issue, but I think across a lot of the issues with clinical trials. So you're absolutely right, and I love it. And this is something we talk about a lot as a site, but I think it's challenging. It's challenging to find people who can have the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And in replacement of having someone who has that skill set, maybe there's a script, a modified script, right, that they can follow when they come in the door. Like, hey, kind of at the very least follow the script until you get good enough to where you don't need to follow it. But I don't want to make it seem like I know all the answers. I don't know what it's like on a day-to-day basis with the sites, but it's my suggestion.
No, again, I love that kind of stuff because it's seemingly subtle, but makes just an outsized impact. Little things like that. And again, they're not little; they're big. And again, that starts to build some trust. That starts to put people at a little more at ease. And once we see it all the time. Like people come in nervous or scared, but once you show that you're a human being and have compassion, I mean, you know all their kids' names. They're bringing you cookies with their visits. You really get and build relationships with people, and that's frankly like a big part of the beauty of this job. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's that hug that you're trying to scale. How do you scale that hug?
That's exactly what it is, though. It's the human element of it that is hard to attach an ROI to per se, because it's, hey, like if you're trying to train this to a coordinator, it's like, hey, don't suck as a person. Look at the person across you and treat them like a person. It's hard to train that if someone just doesn't have it innately sometimes. So like the script can help, but then you start like, how do you say like, we're doing the ROI on this, we're doing these activities, and like, yeah, this person's really a good people person, so they do this much better. It's less of like a one-to-one equation you can put out there, but it's so important and it's so often missed. And I mean, in anything, I mean, running a sales team is the same way. You have someone who's great and someone who's not, and you're saying, what are they doing differently? And you're like, well, one of them sucks as a human, one of them's really great. Like that's hard. You can't really put that in an HR review, right? Like, how do you explain the success on that human piece of it?
It is so important. I use a quick example. In my previous role, when I was dean of business school, I had some owners of Chick-fil-A come in and train our staff, our team, because, you know, we would have students that would come into the office and the staff like be talking to each other and the students would be waiting, and I'd be like, no, the students are our customers. So when they come in the door, we need to engage with them, you know, a certain way. So I had the training take place, and it was difficult for them to really grasp that. But what I did is I picked up on the whole my pleasure. You know, when you go to Chick-fil-A and then you do something, they say my pleasure. And so I said, we're going to use my pleasure now. So when we help a student out at the very end, I want the last thing you say to be my pleasure. And it was so awkward to so many people. Like it was almost, they were like, my pleasure. but it made a big difference on the students. And then at some point it became part of the culture. Like we said it is, and it really made a big difference. So I do believe what you're saying is really true. Like it's hard to teach some people like these really good, genuine human communication skills to connect with people. But I think you can look at modifying some processes to try to make up for some of that in the case. And I think there's still room to be made and adopting some of those processes to get to some of those outcomes.
Yeah, fair. Do you think, I mean, over the long term, if we're not, especially sites, aren't adopting sort of more equitable and sort of community first approaches, I mean, do you think you're going to start to see an economic impact, negative economic impact, like on these sites? Like, does it become truly, you know, not only the right thing to do, but, you know, a good business case as well?
Yeah, I have a hypothesis that at some point, one of these large site networks are going to approach us and say, you know what, we recognize the value here, and we don't want to just kind of nibble around the edges on something transactional short term. But what if we truly took your model and applied it across our site network in a very consistent way? And what could that mean for that site network in terms of competitive advantage when it comes to engaging with sponsors and so forth? I believe that that's going to be the case. We've got to do our part to build our community large enough and our processes and our name and our brand and our recognition and ROI enough. But to me, if that doesn't happen, I think it's a lost opportunity. I tell people sometimes, like, our business model is like ketchup. Again, I'll borrow my business school days. I'd ask my students, do you want to be the ketchup or do you want to be the hamburger? And of course, I want to be the hamburger. And I'm like, well, let me tell you the benefits of being ketchup, right? One, I don't have to deal with cows. Two, you're going to put ketchup on a lot of things other than just a hamburger. And then, I said 3, we just talk about the economics of this. And so I kind of consider Acclinate to be this ketchup. Like reason we say we're not a clinical trial recruitment company, because we're not going to solve a clinical trial recruitment's overall solution for a sponsor. But I think if you look at us in terms of our ketchup, if I can stick with that analogy for a second, that if you apply that across a large site network, you start getting something that is much more tastier than what it is.
All right, new Acclinate slogan. New Acclinate slogan. Obviously, it's lunchtime for Dell because he's talking about hamburgers and ketchup. Acclinate, we are the ketchup.
We are the ketchup. I'm going to try. I'm getting my marketing person who might be watching this right now saying, no, please stop.
Please don't. Then there's all the other condiments. There's mustard. There's
mustard. Yeah.
Don't worry. I'll have something made in Canva and post it online pretty soon.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I can't wait to see it.
Well, very good. Denali, any more questions?
No, this has been great.
Yeah. Anything else you want to close out with, Del?
Nah, I appreciate you guys being real. I've been admirers of you individually and your podcasts, and just the fact that you're trying to break through some of this pontification that takes place in the industry and getting down to the real talk. So just continue to do the work, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part.
Yeah, I mean, like you earlier, I mean, I think we do. It's hard. You go to conferences, you hear the same stuff, and I hated it. And now I've sort of come around, and I think that we got to keep shouting it until somebody does something about it, whether it takes twice or it takes 1,000 times. So yeah, it sucks and it's a pain, but I think it's still a cumulative thing. The more we keep raising our voices and yapping about it, the more closer we're getting to being able to make some change. So, and likewise, yeah, I've kept an eye on what you've been doing, and I'm a big fan. So we appreciate you coming on, man.
Absolutely. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. So where can folks find you if they want to get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah. Where can they find me? For company-wise, Acclinate.com is our company, and my LinkedIn is there. Of course, Del Smith, and email-wise, del@acclinate.com. Easy way to find me as well too. Happy to connect and talk with anybody that reaches out to me.
Awesome.
All right, Del. Thanks so much, and we'll see you guys next week.
Sounds
Later,
good.
guys.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Note to File. We're committed to continuing to bring you independent and unfiltered coverage of the clinical trial industry.
We want to talk about what you want to hear. So if you have something on your mind, hit us up at notetofilepodcast.com.